All right, so today on the next episode of the 8 Domains podcast, we have an exciting guest, Paul Hunter. Paul and I met for the first time at a Jiu Jitsu tournament to where we got to face off 3 times, and Paul took 2 of those times. I took 1, and then it just, I don't know, seemed to kind of click. We were just, it's weird going into a situation like that because it's a combative situation to where you think, oh, I need to have some like aggression and opposition, and like I don't want to know this guy, I don't want to humanize him. But I had like looked you up on Instagram, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool guy. He does this thing with his dog Rigby, and so anyways, that's what I'm attributing my 2 losses to, is I just liked you too.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's it. So are we recording now?
We are recording.
Okay, cool.
We've been recording since you stepped in. So.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you for coming on the podcast and just kind of following you on Instagram and kind of getting little glimpses into what's important to you. I thought that you'd be a great guest to come and talk about things like family, about the marital domain, of course the physical domain, and just wherever the conversation meanders is going to be just fine. I know that we met ahead of time, and it was over an hour. We just kind of chatted about all sorts of different domains, so we can just kind of take it from there. I'll say this, like, anything new and exciting happening in your life that you want to talk about?
So much. So first of all, back to your point, we met at the Jiu Jitsu tournament. Funny thing is, like you said, you go into that tournament and like literally the person is there trying to submit you, trying to hurt your arm or choke you out or whatever. And almost every person I've ever competed against, I'm friends with afterwards. Yeah. And I mean, even people that I competed against 7 years ago, we communicate on social media like, hey, I see you had a baby, congrats, you know what. Yeah. So it's a weird thing, like you said.
It is a weird thing.
But that was a fun day. The first match, I just didn't know if I had enough for you. And then I
well, that was all I had. Yeah. That first match was everything.
Yeah, well, that was a lot of fun. But a lot of crazy stuff happening in my life. In fact, I feel like, that line from the movie when the kid, I think it's in Ricky Bobby, when he says, I'm all hopped up on Mountain Dew or all hyped up on Mountain Dew. I literally feel like I've got to step off the treadmill for a second.
Yeah.
So we've got, 3 years ago I had no grandchildren. Okay. 2 years and 9 months ago I had my first grandson. 14 months later, my second grandson. 3 months later, my first granddaughter. 15 months later, my 4th granddaughter. This was just 4 weeks ago. And then my youngest daughter just adopted again, and they got home with the little girl they adopted Friday.
Wow.
So I've gone from 0 grandkids to 5 grandkids in less than 3 years. So that's crazy. We've got our house torn apart. We're getting cabinets and we're getting floors, and so I'm living in chaos right now. and today was nutty just with work stuff. So I was like, all right, I got to go in here, put my phone down, and just get off the treadmill. So I'm super excited to be here.
Well, and I'm super excited that you're here, and it's also a good, I think, reminder, because I was talking to David beforehand, and we were kind of poking fun at me because I was basically just saying, like, I really hate that I have to work.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm not even working that much. I'm clicking buttons on a computer, sending a new payroll administrator some documents so that we can switch over to a different company that's going to save me money and time. And then I also have to hire a marketing intern. And then I need to hire another person for our neurofeedback clinic. And I just signed a lease and cut checks on expanding offices in Hendersonville. And, and really what's bumming me out is, like, I have to do that. And what would the version of me 6 or 7 years ago who was working in the job I was in, like, what would that version of me say to me complaining today? I'd probably get a swift kick in the face is what I would get from that version of me saying, like, wait a minute, what, you work for yourself and you're complaining about having to click buttons on a computer? And so the high quality problems that we tend to, but one of the things is that it doesn't mean that they're not stressful.
Right.
It just means, to put it in perspective, that it's high quality stress.
Yep.
That maybe previous versions of ourselves would die for.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I agree. Same with me. I don't own my own business, but if I look at, I've had a lot of roles in the food service business for 30 years, and a lot of those roles were like super stressful, around the clock stress. And I'm in a role now where I don't have the constant stress. There's stress there to perform and to hit numbers and everything. But, you know, I look back and I say, man, a few years ago, I would have given anything to be in the role I'm in now. And now I'm in it, and sometimes I don't appreciate it like I should. But,
yeah, because it is
you said,
stressful nonetheless.
Because like you said, I wish I didn't have to work. I wish I could just do jiu-jitsu and hang out with my dog.
Yeah, I just want to go to the gym, do jiu-jitsu, and then like hang out with my kids and travel.
Yep.
Is that too much to ask for?
I guess.
It's ridiculous. It is. But
I feel like I have to constantly like remind myself what I would have thought was amazing. Like I compare success to what 18-year-old version of me would be is successful, because I think like in the moment I get frustrated by current day stress.
Yep.
And if I think about 18-year-old me looking at now, 18-year-old me would be like, dang, that guy's killing it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well then
going on.
just constantly remember that, and you're happy.
Yeah.
And I do feel like that in a big way. Benji and I talked about this. Like, for me personally, I'm in the best health I've ever been in my life. Like, I'm more focused than I've ever been in my life. Like, there's a lot of things going extremely well for me, and I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm really grateful for that. But you lose track. You get caught up in the day-to-day, and you get stressed out. And so, anyway.
Well, I want to jump into that topic then, of like things are going well. And I think a lot of times we don't stop and ask ourselves why. Why are things going well? So, Paul, why are so many things going well in your life?
Well, I can tell you why. So, this may be a long answer, but, we'll hit a lot of things. Because once I started listening to your podcast and the 8 domains and thinking about the different domains, it really resonated with me because I feel like without even knowing it, I was sort of putting things in those domains, or I was compartmentalizing them that way, and I didn't know it, right? So one of the things I think that has attributed to the fact that things are going really well for me is I just made a decision. So when I was 48 years old, I was, for whatever reason, it just sort of hit me, and I said, man, I'm looking at 50. And I was 65 pounds heavier than I am now. I was working all day, stressed out. I would come home. I was literally drinking diet drinks all day long and junk food and whatever. And I'm in the food business, and everywhere I went, customers are giving me things to eat. And I would come home and I would veg out in front of a TV. And I wasn't in a good spot. You know, like I was successful at work and, you know, all those things, but I wasn't in a good spot. So I said, you know, I'm approaching 50. And I literally created this mantra for myself, fittest at 50. And I said, when I turn 50 years old, I'm going to be the fittest I've ever been in my life. I'm going to do it. And so for me, 49 was big. Like 7's my number. Everything about 7 I love. Like 7's just my number. But I thought, you know, 7 times 7, 49. Like that's, because I was about to turn 49, and I said, I'm doing this. So I put it on my calendar every day, fittest at 50. The other thing that I did, you've probably heard this, anybody who's ever heard of Jocko's podcast, Discipline Equals Freedom. And I listened to that, and I thought about it, and I said, man, that really makes sense. Like, I can say I'm going to be in the best shape of my life when I turn 50. And I can want it, but if I don't discipline myself, I'm not going to be there.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally, that year, in 2018, I started training jiu-jitsu. And I went all in 6 days a week. You know, I started cleaning up my eating. I started doing intermittent fasting. I immediately started feeling better. I started losing weight. I started getting in better shape. I felt my gas tank, my cardio was getting better. And, you know, we've talked about it. I literally became obsessed and addicted to jiu-jitsu. I love it. I'm addicted, and I don't apologize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so much of everything that started to follow after that got better because of those goals. Like, okay, I'm going to be the fittest ever. Well, guess what that means? That means I've got to exercise. I've got to eat right. When I started exercising and eating right, my clarity, my brain, everything felt better, right? I could think better. And then I was training jiu-jitsu. And so I heard you guys talking about this in a recent podcast. You've always got a problem to solve. And in jiu-jitsu, you never solve all the problems.
Every answer presents a new problem.
Yeah, I don't care how many times you do something, 1,000,000 times, you can roll with a different person, and all of a sudden you answer that, and you're like, wait, I don't have the answer to this problem.
Every time.
Yeah. And I felt that when I rolled with your professor, Milton Bastos.
Yeah, no, nothing works with him.
I can tell you about that. But, so I think that, and I said, discipline is the key. And I literally would write on my calendar like the weight I wanted to be, and I just started working toward those things. And I said, whatever I do in life, I have to discipline myself to reach these goals. Obviously, I have goals other than, fitness and nutrition goals, but it made me better at those, right? So I would write down my goals, number 1, be closer to God this year. And so that was a goal, and I would work on it. Number 2, lead my family well, right? And so I would have this goal, and I would discipline myself. Well, am I leading my family well? So a long answer to say I made a decision. I said, I can be the 50-year-old guy sitting on the couch getting fat, taking all kinds of medicines and wondering, this is just how it is. That's what people used to tell me.
Yeah.
Hey, you turn 40, you start falling apart.
Yeah. Everything goes downhill from there. Yeah.
Or I can take control. And I made a decision, and I took control. And I literally feel better than I've ever felt in my whole life.
And so when you set a goal, fittest at 50, sure, you can measure that and compare that against 47, 48, 49, and all the years before. But that doesn't sound so much like a true goal, because a goal is like measurable, it's completable.
Right.
It's, like I arrive at the end point. I either did or didn't.
Yeah.
It would have been easy for you to do what a lot of people do and say, well, I am now the fittest at 50. Now what? Right? So I don't think it was so much of a focus on goals as it was on values and disciplines, which is what we talk about when you said it resonated with you so much, the 8 domains. And I think that's why, is because we don't talk about setting goals. Like, my physical values have nothing to do with body weight or hours on the mat or weights on a bar. It has everything to do with the discipline to just continue to show up and to do the things that will trap a future version of myself in the set of consequences that I want him trapped in.
Yep.
And so those investments are those disciplines. Yeah. And so the question that I asked is like, well, why are so many things going well in your life? And it comes down to not because of any other reason, but I decided to start doing well. Yeah. When we do well, things tend to go well. We tend to feel well. But it's in the doing that is really what determines how well we are. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a client today, and it was weird because it's like his life is opening up. He's got this new great job, and the culture at this new company is 180 degrees from this other company that he's at, and he's got all this time, and financially they're great, and he's feeling wonderful, and he's clicking with his wife, and then he's like, yeah, just everything is just really going well. And I'm like, well, you need to watch out for that. Yeah. Because that's when we take our foot off the gas pedal, is when things are going well. We think, well, I am doing well. No, you're not. You're doing well when you're doing well. Yeah. When you're investing behaviorally in healthy things for yourself. And so that's kind of the crux of it. Yeah.
And you were talking about, you made a decision. There's a lot of people that make decisions and then their lives don't change. Yeah. And so I think the big difference is you made a decision and you followed through daily. Yep. Like, you had the reminder every day, and it's the daily it's not that you didn't set a week or a goal every week. At the end of the week, I'm going to do this and not strive towards it. Like, it's got to be a daily action.
Yeah.
Otherwise, at 50, nothing would have changed.
Yeah, and that's so true. And so I want to circle back on something you said, but to that point, that's where I think the discipline equals freedom came in, right? So if somebody wants freedom from obesity, they have to discipline themselves with what they eat in the lifestyle. If somebody wants freedom from financial, ruin, they have to discipline their spending. And it applies to everything. So to your point, I could have said and wanted to, but every morning when the clock goes off at 4:21,
do the thing.
Like, I got to get up and go. If I don't get up and go, I'm not going to reach those goals. Now, back to what you said. So I was thinking about, this is not the 8 domains, but I was thinking about how I've compartmentalized things, like maybe without even realizing it, right? So to your point, and again, you guys were talking in the last podcast about how, you solve a problem, and that's the problem, that you just solved your problem. Well, what if you don't have another one, right? So I could have gotten my fittest at 50 and stepped on the scale and said, there it is. Yep. That's the same weight I wrestled at in high school.
I have arrived.
Because it was, right?
Yeah.
Like, boom, I did it. And then the next thing you know, I'm eating the garbage.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm exercising and I get fat and whatever. But I didn't do that because somewhere in that year and a half of getting to the best shape of my life, it became very clear to me, and I tell people this all the time, and I think at first they think I'm joking, but it came very clear to me what the 3 things that I value most are, right? That's faith, family, and jiu-jitsu. Literally, right? And so everything started to have to fit in those buckets, right? And so somebody says, well, what about work? Okay, well, let's talk about that. My faith tells me if I don't work, I shouldn't eat, right? My faith tells me I need to take care of my family. So, yeah, of course work is important. It has to be important. So, somebody might say, well, faith, family, and jiu-jitsu. Well, what about, the homeless epidemic or this or that? Like, yes, all of that stuff matters because of my faith, my family, or whatever. But anything that doesn't fit in those buckets or can't help me in those 3 buckets, it's probably something I'm not going to focus on, right? And so that helped me once I reached 50 and I was the fittest of my life. Now I still had things to strive for. Like, I want to be the best dad I can be, the best grandpa, or Pawpaw is what they call me, the best Pawpaw I can be. I want to mentor new students at jiu-jitsu. I want to mentor sales reps at my job and help them or whatever. All of those things are made better because I discipline myself to the 3 things that matter: faith, family, and jiu-jitsu. And I could talk forever on jiu-jitsu. You can back me up on this. I think jiu-jitsu makes you better at almost everything else. Now, you can go too far, and jiu-jitsu can make you really bad at some things, right? So some people who have ruined relationships and marriages because of jiu-jitsu. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about, for me, being obsessed with jiu-jitsu makes me want to be better in every other part of my life. Every other part of my life.
Yeah.
So
I can say that there's not any part of, with the exception of, like, I would rather be there than working.
Yeah.
Same here. And also I continue to work and do the things that I do because it's not a free hobby. It's not like running, and so it's they are connected.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think about really the biggest thing, and I was talking to we were talking to Josh Sutcliffe about this in a upcoming episode that's going to be released soon, of just like what I've gotten from jiu-jitsu, really, beyond the physical skills and the physical fitness and confidence, and that it's the relationships.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
And we talked about a little bit about that. Like, I've got my, Liberdage is a big school. There's a bunch more people that go there and train than the ones that I know. But I've got, like, my kind of core group of about, I don't know, roughly a dozen guys that I see, and I spend 4 or 5 hours a week with these guys. Like, since I was in school, I never hung out with friends that often, right? And so it's that too, of just, I can't tell you how many clients, like adult male clients, and one of the things that comes up in therapy is like, how do you make friends? Like, I just moved to Nashville. Yeah, I work, but like, what do I do? And I'm like, what do you like to do? Go do that, and your people will be there.
Yeah. That's what you were talking about in the last podcast.
Yeah, go do that.
So the same thing for me. Whenever I got involved in jiu-jitsu, I was not looking for community. I didn't need community. I didn't think, right? So I wasn't looking for that. I literally wanted to go learn jiu-jitsu. I wanted to grapple. I wanted to get better at, self-defense and wrestling and all that stuff, right? But what I got was all of that and community. Like, I mean, a real sense of community. My mom passed away 2 years ago next week, right? So almost 2 years. And literally the day of her funeral, that morning, I went to my 6 a.m. jiu-jitsu class. And I'm training jiu-jitsu, and afterwards I go home, I take a shower, I go down, and we have her funeral and everything. But I show up to jiu-jitsu, and at the end of class, they bring out this big bouquet of flowers they bought for my mom. And I've got this picture with 25 guys and a few of the ladies that train with us, and I was blown away. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't know these people a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And like you said, some of them I spend 5-6 hours a week with, right? Yeah. And they brought me these flowers, and they literally were like hugging me and crying with me, and it was a sense of community, and I was like, man, this is real, Yeah. And you get, the weird thing is you get to know those people on a different level, even if you don't do anything outside of jiu-jitsu with them.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you're trusting somebody who's going super hard with you and trying to submit you. You're trusting that when they do submit you, they're not going to hurt you, right? Mm-hmm. You're trusting that you're looking out for each other so nobody breaks a neck or an elbow or whatever, right? And there's this level of trust, and it creates a community that's just different. I mean,
yeah. And the guys that I have seen throughout my years of training who come in and it's almost like they're looking for a fight club, they don't last very long.
Mm-mm. They come and go.
They kind of sit on the wall. They don't talk with people. They don't interact with anybody. They just kind of come in and it's like, oh, you're just here to like blow off steam. Yeah. Okay. And then they don't last very long.
Yep.
So my advice is like whenever we have a new white belt come in and they're new and they're eager and they're excited and they got a big wide look on their face and a big smile and they're like, you have any advice for blah blah blah? I'm like, yeah, keep that smile on your face 6 months from now. Yeah. If you can keep a smile on your face for the first 6 months, you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
Because this should be fun.
Yeah.
If anything else, it should be fun.
Yeah, and I think the exception to that I see occasionally is that guy who comes in looking for a fight, and it's usually, I love wrestlers. I wrestled in high school, but it's usually a wrestler. He comes in and he's like, yeah, these jiu-jitsu guys, right? But what usually happens with some of those is they get humbled, by an old brown belt or something. Yeah. And instead of like getting upset about it, they're like, whoa, I need to learn this. Like that guy, he's 20, 30 years older than me, and he just handled me easily. Yeah. Like, I want to learn this. So sometimes they're able to let that ego, back off, and they embrace it. But you're right. The ones who come in just looking for a fight, they usually don't last.
Well, that's the only way community works is if you kind of get rid of the ego.
Yeah.
Because if you have to be the top dog in your little community, it's not community.
That's so true.
Yeah. It's hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it makes me, I don't know, it's something that I look forward to every single week. I can't wait for Monday because Monday afternoon is my day to teach, and it's just like 8 or 10 people are going to show up, and we're just going to have a good time.
Yeah.
And we're taking it seriously, but no one's taking themselves seriously. Right. Type of thing. Like we're taking each other's safety seriously. We're taking the technique that we're trying to learn seriously, but like it's not that serious. Right? We're all middle-aged guys on noon on Monday. Like it's not
Yeah.
it's not that serious. But yeah, man, that's great. We could talk about jiu-jitsu for the rest of the hour or more. But I have some other curiosities about.
Before we shift off that, I want to say one thing. So I read this book years ago. Other than the Bible, this is no doubt the book that changed my life more than anything. It's a book by John Eldredge called Wild at Heart.
Yeah, we're familiar.
In this book, he said, and I'll never forget this quote. He said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who are alive."
Yeah,
okay?
I remember that, yeah.
So I have not put that into practice in every area of my life, right? I haven't, like, not at work. I didn't, in high school when they said, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I didn't say, "I want to be a business developer in the food business," right? I wanted to be a coach and a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that, right? But in some areas of my life, I've done that. And one of those is jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu makes me come alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I'm alive, I'm a better husband, I'm a better dad, granddad, co-worker, whoever. I just feel like if whatever it is that makes you come alive, if you can just do it and embrace it, that's what the world wants to see. That's attractive to people. Like, hey, there's a guy that's, man, he's fired up about something. He's alive. Like, he's got a zest. That's attractive to people. So,
and people who don't have that, like people who are stagnate and complacent, they tend to poke fun at people. Like we kind of joke about like CrossFitters won't ever shut up about CrossFit.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu people won't ever shut up about jiu-jitsu.
Never.
Improvers won't shut up about improvers. Shannon. But it's the people who get annoyed at that. They're the people who don't have anything.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
not alive, right?
Yep.
And so kind of something that I've said a lot of times is like I've never been shit on by anybody doing better than me.
Yeah.
So kind of take that as a grain of salt.
Yeah.
If somebody is kind of like getting annoyed at your passion, okay, they're not the person to share it with.
Right.
Just move on, right?
Yep.
You brought up John Eldredge, and that's kind of a blast from the past. He has another quote that has stuck with me. It's from Wild at Heart. Let the world feel the weight of who you are and let them deal with it.
Yes.
And so just go out and invest in the things that make you come alive, the values that you have. Not everybody is going to agree with it. Not everybody is going to understand it. And not everybody needs to. Let them deal with it, because when it's almost like when we find those things that bring a shine to us and we're projecting that shine outward, well, that light exposes things that other people need to deal with. And it's not my job to micromanage that for you, but it's also not my job to diminish what excites me
Exactly.
for your comfort.
Yep.
I don't need to
could
be
not agree more.
I don't need to be a bully about it. I don't need to be bullish and evangelical about the things that excite me, but I also don't need to hide them or diminish them because you don't have a thing yet.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture that is constantly trying to diminish. I mean, goodness sakes, if you look hard enough on the internet, you're going to find people that hate you. I don't care who you are. Somebody hates you.
Yeah.
And so, like, we have these echo chambers that magnify the hate of the people that are different from you. And the reality is, like, you actually talked about the 3 values that you have that, like, everything kind of goes into, and I feel like that's a really good way to filter out the things that don't matter, the voices, not to say that people's voices don't matter, but, like, the voices that are, like, trying to tear you down. If it doesn't fit in those 3 domains, like, why does the criticism matter?
I agree.
And it doesn't.
Yep. Yeah. So you said you had some other things you were curious about.
Yeah, I mean, you've been married 35 years, right?
Yep.
That takes a lot of investment into the relationship domain or the romantic domain.
Yep.
We could talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, well,
so
take it from there.
Well, it's kind of funny to tie the 2 subjects together. So I had a tournament a few years ago, and my coach, Kevin Patterson, shout out Coach Kevin, best coach ever. But he was there at the tournament, and so as is normally the case, there was nobody in my age bracket, right? So they put me with the younger guys. So I go against this guy, and he's 30. And we're actually friends now. Like I said, every time I compete with somebody, I'm friends. You may know him. He trains down in Spring Hill with Ray Casillas. But anyway, so I have this match with him, and I go out there, and it's kind of back and forth, back and forth. The guy catches me in an arm bar. I got out of it. He caught me in another arm bar. I couldn't get out of it. I tapped. I lost, right? So we shake hands. I go back over to the side. My wife was there, and I was like, man, I lost. And I can't believe that. Like, I know once I got out of that arm bar, like I knew to not get back. And I'm just beating myself up. And coach comes over. He says, Paul, he's like, how long have you and Michelle been married? At the time, it was 32 years. I said, 32 years? Why? He's like, that kid's 30. You've been married 2 years longer than he's been alive. Like, let it go. And I said, it's a good point. And like I've got a tournament coming up this Saturday. And it looks like the two guys I'm going to be with.
It is this Saturday, isn't it? My kids are going to compete. I decided not to.
Yeah, it looks like the two guys I'm going to be competing against are 30 and 32, right?
Yeah.
But it's so the funny thing about that is, yes, I've been married 35 years, coming up on 36. And, man, not with some challenges.
Yeah.
So my wife and I, we started dating when I was 17 and she had just turned 21. So she's a little over 3 years older than me, but she had just turned 21. And, I was like, oh, I can't believe this beautiful older
college
girl
chick
likes, and I'm like, she's gorgeous, and is this real, And so anyway, we started dating, and we clicked, and everything was just, we were meant for each other, right? And so what we realized pretty quickly, because we got married, I was 20 and she was 23. I don't think she had turned 24 yet. But what we realized is we came into this marriage with a whole bunch of baggage.
No kidding.
Both sides.
Only y'all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds so
Yeah,
strange.
yeah. So she came with this just a lot of stuff. I came with a lot of stuff. And now we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
We didn't have a marriage to model growing up, right? Like my mom and dad hated each other, literally, and stayed together for the kids, right? And then once we were grown, they got a divorce. Her parents hated each other, divorces and all this. So we came into marriage with that, right? So I'll tell you, at 7 years, we hit a spot where we couldn't look at each other. We disagreed on everything. Like if I said that koozie was red, she would say, no, it's not, it's magenta or whatever, and we would get in a big fight about it. I mean, it got so bad. So we went to see her grandfather. Her grandfather was a preacher for 65 years. Wonderful man. He was a mentor to me, but we went to see him, and I think we had literally talked about divorce. And both of us thought we would never talk about divorce. We won't, right? And so here we go to meet with her grandfather. And I think she thought he was going to say, well, I understand, if you're not compatible, whatever. No. You've heard the term righteous indignation. I've never seen him raise his voice before that or after that. He's passed on now, but I never saw him raise his voice before or after that. But that day, he kind of raised his voice. And he said, you're not giving up. And one of the things he told us is, he says, marriage is not the butterflies in the stomach and that sensation, oh, you're in love, or whatever. That's not it. He said, marriage is you wake up next to them, their breath stinks, their hair's a mess, and you're fighting over who drank the last of the milk. And that's marriage. That's real, right? And you got to power through that. And he said, you're going to stick this out, and you're going to be glad you did. But he was serious about it. He was a little tiny man, but he became really big there for a few minutes when he was letting us, basically saying, you're not giving up. So we left his house that day, and we said, okay, we're not giving up. We got to give this a shot. And we both have looked back thousands of times and said, "Thank God for Big Daddy." That's what we all called him, Big Daddy. Thank God for him, not because divorce is never the right option. I'm not saying that, right? There are divorced people in the world who maybe they needed to get a divorce, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying he didn't allow us to give up. And because he didn't allow us to give up, we look back now 35 years, 2 daughters, 5 grandkids. Our life is amazing, right? And we've shared so many memories together and trips and just everything, right? And I look back and I say, man, we were gonna throw in the towel. At 7 years, we were going to throw in the towel. Now we're 28 years past that, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we did counseling.
I was going to say, my question was going to be like, okay, it's great for Big Daddy to say, you're not giving up.
Yeah.
Well, then what the hell do we do? Because
Right,
we're doing and with what we have to do it with isn't working. So what did you do? How did you invest in that process?
So one of the things we did, and it's kind of odd looking back, one of the things we did that helped the most was counseling. And the reason I say it's odd looking back is because we quit pretty quickly. I don't know why we quit. You know what I mean? And my wife and I were actually talking about this not long ago. Like, how long did we go to that guy and why did we quit? But I don't remember how we got connected with this counselor. Like it was like on Nolensville Road. You turn and you go on a back road, and it was in this dumpy little building. And I have no idea how we got connected with this guy, but he just said things and asked us questions and made us ask questions of each other that just helped so much, and some of those little nuggets they're common sense now, but at the time I felt like, wow, this is a revelation, For example, he was like, whenever you're getting upset about something, avoid words like always and never.
Sure, yeah.
And now that's common sense.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've been in the sales world for 30 years, and I'm like, of course you avoid those words. But then I didn't know. Then it was like, you always do this. You always say that.
You never listen
You
to me.
never listen to what I'm saying,
Right.
And but little things like that, and then having us write out things and share them with each other and ask questions of each other. I think it got us to see things in a different way, and it got us over a hurdle. But again, I look back and I really feel like that was a big part of our healing, and I don't know why we quit, because I don't think we went to him for very long.
Well, and sometimes when you get what you needed to get, you move on, and that's okay. I've had clients come in, couples come in, and they're either on the brink or they're approaching the brink, and we work for weeks and weeks and weeks, sometimes months. I've been seeing some couples for 3 years, kind of intermittently, not consistently, but they'll come back, they'll circle up and be like, we need a tune-up, and then they'll come in and they'll debrief and relitigate some argument that they've been having for the last 2 weeks on my couch, and then I'll say things like, well, have you thought about asking your partner any questions? Because you just seem to be telling them what it is that they think and what it is that they feel and why they're doing what they're doing. Have you tried to be curious? Yeah. And then it's just that little thing. They're like, oh, shit, yeah, we forgot to be curious. We have more conclusions than curiosities, which is a big thing that I talk about in couples counseling. Have more curiosities, especially before you draw conclusions.
Right.
So ask questions. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just get what you needed to get and you move on.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's funny that that always and never, the Gottmans, they've repackaged that as criticism. Anytime you start a statement with the word you, you're probably about to criticize your partner, especially if you're in an argument.
Yeah.
And if you're using always and never, and the things that I've told, because I've had people, he never listens to me, and he always ignores everything that I say, and he never puts me first, and blah blah blah. And I'll look at the partner and I'll be like, listen, if that's true, I recommend you guys get a divorce. If he never listens to you, never, not one time, why'd you marry him?
Yeah.
Because it can't be true.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, yeah, that the Gottmans call it criticism. Anytime that you're kind of levying a complaint, but you're adding extra steps to it, is how I say. That's the difference between a criticism and a complaint.
Yeah.
It's just a complaint with extra steps to
So,
attack a person's
that's
character.
a little bit on the 35 years of marriage. So.
Yeah. So counseling, and then you guys started apply. It sounds like you started applying the principles and the concepts and the little tools that the counselor was giving you, and that tends to make a difference when that's the investment.
Right.
I also have a lot of couples that come in and they hear me and I give them my pep talk and they smooth things over for the hour, but then when they come back a week later, I'm like, well, what have we been working on and how have you been communicating differently? And they haven't.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then this isn't going to work, guys.
I was going to say, it goes back to exactly the same thing with your, fittest at 50, is that there's the decision, there's the plan, but if you don't do it, then it wouldn't. Then you sit back in the chair 2 weeks later, nothing happened during the past 2 weeks because you only did it when you were in the chair in the office.
And I think a lot about what makes a successful couple is that you can't wait for your partner to go first.
Yeah.
You can't wait for your partner to get their shit together for you to start getting yours together.
Yeah.
And so
sometimes that's the hardest part.
Absolutely,
it's like, but
they're wrong.
Trying.
She's wrong.
She's not trying. Like, I don't want to be the one to do all the,
Right.
But you're right.
And so then the question becomes like, okay, what are you fighting for, really?
Right.
It's probably not for your partner to say that they were wrong and that they're sorry. It's you're probably fighting to be heard, to be respected, to be connected, right? And so getting more focused on what is actually happening.
Yep.
As opposed to just what are we fighting about? We're fighting about the dishwasher, or we're fighting about the way the towels were folded, Like I remember, I've been married twice, but one of the things that I recall being 23 and married is I like to fold my t-shirts a certain way. And my first wife didn't fold my shirts that way. And I took the time to show her how I wanted the t-shirts to be folded.
So nice of you to do that.
And she did not fold my t-shirts that way. And we got into this big fight about it, to where eventually, guess what? I ended up getting to fold all of my t-shirts for the rest of our marriage. But the t-shirts didn't matter. It was that I was trying to bid for a connection and saying, hey, I really appreciate you folding my t-shirts, and I would really feel even more appreciative if you would do it this way. Instead, I was critical. I'd be like, that's not the right way to do it. Why did you do it that way? And so there's a way to do these things that I don't know many 23-year-olds who know how to do them well. And
I
so
agree.
Marriage counseling, and one of the most impressive things that comes through that door is a 24, 25, 26-year-old couple who come in and say, there's nothing really major going on. We just don't want anything major going on. So we just want somebody to sit with every once in a while and like look under the hood.
Man, that's incredible.
And I'm like, that's good on you. Yeah, I've had that happen several times, and I'm just blown away by it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so 35 years. What else, man? How about your relationship domain to your kids?
Yeah, so
I'm curious about this because that's coming up a lot these days with, you seem to have good, close relationships with your adult children.
Yep.
And that is becoming more and more rare, I think.
I think it is. So I want to... I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back.
You can.
I really don't want it to sound like that. But I do feel so blessed that I have a phenomenal relationship with both of my daughters and with my sons-in-law. So I really feel blessed. I feel like they listen to me, they look up to me, they appreciate me. But the relationship I have with them, I'm so blessed. We're fortunate. We have one daughter with the two sons and who just adopted the little girl. They live 2 miles from us. My oldest daughter, who has 2 daughters, lives 3 miles from us. So we literally get to see our kids and grandkids almost every night. Like it's such a blessing. But my youngest daughter started training jiu-jitsu with me. Mm-hmm. she's a little animal. Like, she's going to be so good. Like, and her husband, my son-in-law Josh, trains. But we have a great relationship. My oldest daughter, the one I told you about before, who she got her master's of social work at UT. She's was working part-time between the two kids, and now after when the youngest one's old enough, she's going to be looking to get back into that field, I think. But she and I have always just been, I mean, like that. We share so many similarities, OCD personalities, a love of music. Like, you know, she's sending me, Dad, have you heard the lyrics to this song? And I'm like, listen to this one, you know. And so I'm just blessed with both my daughters. We have phenomenal relationships.
I would. I mean, you said you don't want to pat yourself on the back, and so you use words like blessed, which is true. But I think there's a lot that goes into the patting on the back to say, like, that doesn't just happen,
right?
Especially in like current times, like that sort of relationship doesn't just like, oh, we didn't do anything, it just happened to be. No, I think that the same thing that you're talking about, these other things, I think you were very intentional with your kids, and so therefore you fast forward decades, and the discipline that you had, the discipline, like internal discipline, the intention that you had with them paid off to the point where you're benefiting from all the work that you did that whole time.
Yeah, maybe so. But I think it's just because it matters so much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I could have not disciplined myself in that way, because it matters so much. You know, and I can literally look back and I can see snapshots from each daughter. For example, our oldest daughter, we took her to college, right? That's an emotional experience. Oh, my goodness. You haven't lived through that yet, right?
No.
Your son's a teenager.
17.
It's hard to explain, right? So we take her to UT, we get everything in her dorm, and then it's time to leave, and you just get that hole, and it's like, oh, what's happening, right? So I did pretty well. I'm a crier. Like, I cry at the drop of a hat. But I did pretty well. My wife just boo-hooed all the way home. But here's what's weird is we went back, I don't know how long later. We picked her up for a weekend. We went to Gatlinburg. We did some fun things. We took her back at the end of the weekend. We went to a UT football game, took her back to her dorm. And when we left that time, I don't know what it was about that time, but I mean, it was just like a hole in my heart. But to me, it said, that's how close we are. Because she had the same hole in her heart, right? And like, there was a time her freshman year, she was struggling with some anxiety and depression. And at first we didn't know, like, is this normal freshman pressure? Is this something different? It was something different. It got really bad. And on a Sunday night, she called me. She said some things that concerned me. I said, I'm coming. 3 hours to Knoxville. Took her to a hotel. We spent the night. She slept for the first night in weeks. You know, we pretty quickly after that, she got some counseling. She made it to the end of the semester, came home. You know, we got her some more help or whatever, and it all worked out. But I look back, that meant more to her than almost anything. She's like, Dad, I called, and you were there, right? And then I think about my youngest daughter. She went to the Marine Corps straight out of high school. So 12 years old, she said, I want to be a Marine. And we thought, you know, that'll fade probably, right? Mm-hmm. And so 13, 14, she's still saying it, you know, and she just had this tough mindset. So she graduates in May. August, she gets on a bus to go to Parris Island. And there I was again with that hole in my heart. And I was like, what's happening? A piece of me, my daughter, she's leaving everything she knows. She's leaving everybody who matters to her. She's going to a place she's never been. She's going to get yelled at and screamed at, but she's doing this. And it was just, man, it was just gut-wrenching, right? And so the first time we got to see her, if you don't know how that works, they go through the 13 weeks, and then at the end they do the crucible. I think it's called the crucible. If I've gotten that wrong, she'll kill me. But it's that last, I think it's 72 hours. 48 hours, but there's 72 hours. They almost don't eat anything. They almost don't sleep. They're marching. It's torture, right? While she did that, I fasted right here from home. Like I fasted while she was doing that, and I ended up fasting like 54 hours, you know. And so we go for her graduation. And the first time I saw her, like when she came around the corner and I got to hug her, like, I mean, just, I can't tell you like the emotions that poured out of me. But I look at those two instances whenever I had to go when my daughter was depressed and how much that meant to her. And then when I saw my other daughter after graduation from boot camp and how the emotions poured out of me and her. And I'm like, that. I think that means, hey, I did something right, right? I poured into them. They knew I loved them. They know I love them, and you felt that.
You made me think of something. One of the things that I hope that my kids get to experience from me is when they're in trouble or if they've messed something up, they've gotten themselves into a bind. I don't want them to think, oh my God, my dad is going to kill me. I want them to think, oh my God, I need to call my dad.
Yes, yes.
And that seems to be the experience that you have with your daughters.
Yep.
And so then I think, well, how do I invest in that outcome? The value as a father is I value being approachable and trustworthy and safe for my kids in all situations. So how do I invest in that?
Yeah.
How did you invest in that? That's, you say, well, I must have done something right. No, you must have done and did do a lot of things right. And here's why I want to drill into this is because the world needs more men like you to pat themselves on the back.
Huh. I don't even know how to react to that.
Well, don't. Just sit with it. And this is why. The world needs healthy examples of masculine pride. Healthy examples of masculine pride. And what I mean by that is we need to get in between the spaces of hubris and modesty. Hubris is the narcissistic trait of I'm the greatest there ever was, and if everybody would be just like me and do everything exactly the way that I did it, then that's the only right way to be. I can think of a few examples. And modesty is the shrinking, the minimizing, the mislabeling my good deeds, the attributing it to some other force that enabled me without my will almost, right? Pride is knowing what I have done well and being in agreement with that, and knowing what I didn't do well and being in agreement with that at the same time.
I've never heard it explained that way.
So I think the world needs more examples of healthy masculine pride.
Yeah.
Of I know what I do well, and I'm not embarrassed or going to shrink away from that.
Yeah.
And I also know what I don't do well, and I'm not going to inflate or try to mislabel that or make excuses for it. I'm going to work on it.
Yeah, that's deep. So
I just needed to go pee to come up with something good. I just needed to get that distraction.
Out there, like, putting in the chat GPT, how do I say this and sound smart?
No, I literally was just over here floating away, distracted, trying to pay attention. I'm like, dude, just be a grown up and go pee.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Raise
okay.
your hand.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so I've never heard it explained that way. That makes so much sense. Some people would probably say pride's not a good word to use there. But I know what you're saying, right?
Here, words matter, and I use them very carefully. If I can be proud of my kids, why can I not be proud of me?
Yeah.
Pride is not the inflation of my accomplishments.
Right.
It's the right-sized agreement with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've just never heard it explained that way, but that's really, really good. So I think if you... Okay, so let's be honest. Like, if you sat down and said... You know, were there some things that your dad did right? Both of my, or did wrong, my daughters would probably say, yeah, like, he did this and I didn't like that or whatever. But I heard something very similar to what you said a long time ago, and it really hit me. And that was what you said, like, when my kids do something wrong, do they say, oh no, I hope Dad doesn't find out, or oh no, I better call Dad.
Mm-hmm.
I need Dad, right? And I wanted to be that dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets kind of dicey there, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to be the person who they say, I can do whatever I want, wrong or right. I know it's wrong, and Dad's just going to go along with it. You don't want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't. Like, at some point, you have to stand up for, hey, what you're doing is not good for you.
Yeah.
This is not going to work out well for you, and I've got to stand against this, and they're not going to like that, right? I think I did that fairly, but I think I did it firmly. But I think both of my daughters, in a time of crisis, would have picked up the phone and said, Dad, I messed up. Well, they did. They have. Dad, I messed up, right? And I have to give my wife credit for this. My wife has told them since they were old enough to understand it, there's nothing you can do that's going to make me quit loving you. Whatever it is, you call me, we'll work through it. Like, I don't care what you get into, you pick up the phone, you call me, we're going to get to it, and we're going to love you, and we're going to figure it out, right? And she made that very clear to them. And we almost got to a point where, like, I think there are probably things that they would have done or gotten into, and they would have called her. Because it's like, I don't want Dad to know, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to disappoint Dad. I don't want him to know. Mom will kind of help me work through this and figure out how to do it. But in a time of real crisis, they knew, like, I better call Dad. Dad's the one who's going to help me figure this out, right? And so I don't know the answer to your question.
I have some theories.
Okay, let's hear them.
So you had mentioned, like, if you were to ask your daughters, did Dad do some things I didn't like? Did he mess up? Did he lose his temper? Did he, whatever? Who hasn't, right? I think that we tend to, as parents, we don't focus enough on how important repair is.
Mm-hmm.
We focus on how damaging rupture is. And what we know is that rupture is not nearly as significant as repair. So the quality of your repair, the ability to go to your kids and say, you know what, I was out of line. I shouldn't have raised my voice there. I shouldn't have said what I said. I wasn't listening to you, and you're right. I was wrong. And the ability to apologize to your kids at all stages of life, that repair is more important than the severity of your rupture.
Yeah. Wow.
Or the frequency of your rupture.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's one of the things that I know that I've done well, because I've had plenty of opportunities with my kids to go back. Even my 3-year-old little girl, like, it's a lot. It's a lot to be my age at 43 and dealing with a toddler, and I'm like, we have nothing in common. Like, at least with my 17-year-old, like, and my 10-year-old, we do Jiu Jitsu together. Like, I have nothing in common with these people. And so my patience wears thin sometimes whenever I'm busy or distracted, or, like, I've got 17, 10, and 3, and they all need different things at different stages of life all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I do. I raise my voice, or I get short and snippy or whatever, and almost immediately I'm proud of myself for being able to say, yep, you know what? I was out of line. I lost it. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's reset. Yeah. I think that is more like trust building and helps them to feel more secure with me than if I just, like, had never messed up in the first place.
I think you're definitely right. You know what's funny is you mentioned you've got 17, 10, 3. They all need different things. The funny thing is my girls were only 4 years apart, but they needed totally different things. Yeah. And it's because of who they are. Yeah. Right? So just a quick example is my oldest daughter. Like, if she did something wrong, the only thing it took, her punishment was knowing that she disappointed her dad. God. I mean, literally, like,
none of my kids.
Well, so it was literally like, I disappointed my dad. That is the worst thing I could do. That hurts me. Like, she felt hurt because she disappointed me, right? So with her, Like literally, the punishment did not need to be severe because she just felt so bad. I mean, I remember one time she lied to us about something, and I grounded her for 21 days. And I told her it takes 21 days to build a habit, so you're going to have 21 days to not lie to me or whatever. But it was like the first day into it, I felt like, man, I've overdone it here, right? But I stuck with it for 21 days, right? Yeah. But she felt so disappointed, or she was upset that she disappointed me. My youngest daughter, total opposite. And we've talked about this.
Bring on more days, Dad. Come on.
She's going to see this podcast, I'm sure, but she would tell you the same thing. With her, so strong-willed. That's why she went in the Marine Corps. Like with her, I mean, you could threaten things. You could, when they were younger, I could get the belt and swat her. What? It didn't matter. Like if she believes, I mean, an example of this is in high school. She and some of her friends did some things. We knew they did some things. So as parents, we were all going to ask them and try to figure out the story. She looked us dead in the face and said, it's an honor thing. I'm not telling on my friends. And I'm like, Maddie, you don't have a choice. You're going to tell me what? I will not rat my friends out. And I'm telling you, I think I could have beaten that child. I could have taken her, everything away from her. And she would have said, I will not rat my friends out, right? The other daughter, if she felt like I was going to be disappointed, she would have just spilled the beans, you know. So, but they're so different, and it makes them who they are, right? Yeah. And both can use those qualities to become better at who they're supposed to be, and that's what's beautiful. As you look back and you say, man, I'm glad that I didn't try to discipline the two the same way, or I didn't try to encourage the two the same way, because it wouldn't have worked the same way, right?
Yeah, my youngest, she's been doing this. She'll turn 4 in August, so she's almost 4, but she's been doing this for months. To where if she's got something and she's playing with it, but she's doing something wrong with it, or she's being rough with it, and I'll say like, hey, if you want to continue playing with that, you're going to have to use it correctly, or I'm going to have to take it away. And she'll be like, that's okay, Daddy. And she'll just hand it to me. Yeah. And then she'll go do something else. I'm like,
well, that didn't work.
Didn't work at all. I mean, maybe it did, because she stopped like banging the doll's head against the, the dog's head. But yeah, you're right. Like being attentive, being attuned to what each one of your kids needs, like that in and of itself is an investment of not, I think a lot of times parents fail to be that flexible, and they have it in their head of like how they think their kids should be. And there's I think it's Steven Pinker wrote a book called Blank Slate. I did not read all of this book, but I did read parts of this book, and one of the things that stuck out to me is he talks about how modern day parents make the mistake of thinking they are the designers of their children.
Yeah.
Like, my kid is going to be this way. My kid is going to excel at this. They're going to be great at the violin, or they're going to be great at jiu-jitsu, or they're going to be a straight A student. And what he talks about is like, through the Human Genome Project or something like that, we've discovered that every human being is coded with, in their DNA, about 400 psychological traits that are specific to them, in a combination to them, that will be unlocked throughout their life and development. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so instead of being a designer of your children, the only designing you did was conception.
Right.
That was your contribution.
Yep, that was it.
And you didn't get to pick the combinations and where it got put.
Right.
But now what you have is you're not a designer as much as you are kind of like a shepherd or a guide.
Yep.
Right? And a shepherd you can't force a sheep into acting like a wolf or a dog. You have to deal with what you've got.
Yep.
And creating an environment that is safe and encourages them to flourish in all of the right ways, while also putting boundaries around all of the ways in which they would go sideways and step out of line. And so, it sounds like that was another way that you invested in becoming the type of dad that you ended up being.
Yeah, and I noticed that even whenever you're talking about your two daughters, the separate situations, one in college having a rough time and one in the Crucible or whatever, because you said we knew that she was having some problems, the college situation.
Yep.
So you were aware, you were attentive enough that you could see something.
Right.
And so when you got the call, you were already ready to act.
Mm-hmm.
And so the action again, the attentiveness, you didn't say, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just, put it together and get your life fine. No, you listened, you acted based on that. And then the second thing I think that's huge is, I don't know if you told your daughter you were going to fast while she was going through this fasting period.
We could only communicate with her by letter.
Okay.
So I had written her a letter saying that, but I don't
know
think
if
she
had
gotten it yet.
But the reality is, I think that she knows you're the kind of dad that would do something like that.
Yeah.
And therefore, that gives her enough strength to go through something like that. And then whenever you saw her after it was over, like I guarantee you that meant the world to her.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
you're probably right.
Yeah.
And while she was preparing, like, we trained together. Like, this was before jiu-jitsu. Well, no, I had started training jiu-jitsu, but I'm saying she knew what she was going to have to do. So I would go run with her and do her push-ups with her, and we would do her, all the pull-ups together. We would do all that stuff, getting her ready.
Yeah.
And so I think all of that at the end when she graduated, it's like, I was a little tiny part of that, right?
Not tiny. No, not tiny.
But I mean, that's the way I felt like.
Yeah.
Like she did this.
Yeah.
Right. But I helped her, I encouraged her, I pushed her, and so that was really cool.
Here's another thing that I'm noticing about you as you're talking about your kid. You're giving them credit, and which is the right thing to do, right? I have clients who their main pet peeve with their parents is that their parents weren't involved. Their parents kind of actively did everything that they could to kind of like discourage and thwart them and undermine them, but when they achieved and overcame and became successful anyways, now the parents are online talking about, look at my child, look at my son, so proud of the person that you became, as though they they contributed to it.
Yeah.
So what I like about what I'm seeing in you is you're not discrediting the contributions, but you're also not taking credit for the accomplishment.
Yeah.
Which I think is, again, a right-sized pride. I know what I did. I know my contribution. I'm not going to inflate it and say that was the reason she became successful or was able to do what she did. But I was there.
Right.
And humility is, I didn't do all of it. She did it. It was her action. It was her effort. It was her decision and commitment and discipline. So, boom. Pride and humility meet right there, and that's where we need to be. So, Paul, I'm just over here I'm going to pat your back until you start doing it yourself.
Your back is going to be so pat today.
We need to do this podcast once a week. I'm going to walk out of here saying, hey, I'm doing some things right.
I am somebody.
Yeah. And doggone it, people like me.
Yes, they do.
No, but it's, I tell you, the joys, the ups and downs of raising kids, to me, like, the joy of looking back on it, you almost start to forget the downs, right? 'Cause they're just part of it. But you remember all the good, and you just start to sit back and say, like, for me, I'm like, I have two amazing daughters, as different as they can be, but both amazing daughters. And now they're raising amazing children themselves, and I get to watch my grandkids, grow up and hopefully influence and help them be whatever they're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want them to all be jiu-jitsu world champs and high school wrestling champs, right? But I know that they may want to sing or do the play or play soccer or whatever, and that's fine. Whatever they want to do, like, I want to be that Pawpaw who's in the stands, cheering them on, encouraging them, saying, hey, buddy, do you want to work on this before your next practice? I'll help you. I want to be that guy.
Yeah,
Which don't let me forget that. Go ahead.
Don't let me forget what.
I'm going somewhere with that.
Well, I was just going to say, you made me think of my Pawpaw, who's passed away, but he he would always say, and it didn't matter what my plan was, if I was going to drop out of college and go, into a pyramid scheme selling, amazing mangosteen juice or whatever, he was going to buy the first case or whatever. Right. So or if I was going to sell this car and buy this car, or break up with this girl and start dating this girl, or change this job to go do that job, it didn't matter what it was. He never had like a critical thought about anything that I ever did. Maybe not so great at times, but one thing that I remember about him is he was the guy that I always knew I could go to, and I would tell him my harebrained scheme, and all he would say is, buddy, if it'll make you happy, I hope you do it.
Yeah, and that stuck with you?
It stuck with me. Years. Yeah. Again, I see the flaws there of never having a critical thought at all to share with me about my ideas or plans. But that also wasn't his forte. He was he from a different time. He was a very simple but wise, just kind of like a lovable, supportive guy. And that was just what he would always say. He'd be like, yeah, well, buddy, if it'll make you happy, I hope you do it. And you had kind of said that. Like, I want my kids to be straight A wrestling champs and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu world champions as well. And none of them are probably going to do that. Whatever it is that they decide to become, whatever it is that their 400 psychological traits are hardwired to predispose them to being, I want them to be the absolute best version of whatever that is.
100%.
And, my oldest, Jamin, he's 17, and he went to prom, and he did not wear a tux. He hodgepodged an outfit that fits his personality and his style, and he sent me links, and I was happy to buy them. And it's okay, because in the photos, he's fully alive as himself. Yeah. Not as I would have designed him in my mind, right? But he's fully alive as himself. And whenever I show pictures and this, that, and the other, it's just the right people are just so impressed. They're, Shannon had a conversation with him saw him out and about, and she just came back and told me, she was like, Jamin is just such a cool kid. He's like, and she said, I hope that my daughters are as comfortable being who they are as he is when they're his age. Yeah. And that was a high compliment. And so really what matters is, do I have a good person? Is he a good person?
Right, yeah.
And he is. And it doesn't matter what he looks like and how he likes to dress and the fact that he wants to, whatever it is. Yeah. That doesn't matter. Is he a good person?
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget the goal is not to raise good children. The goal is to raise people who will become healthy, happy, good adults.
Right.
That's the end goal. I want them to be productive, happy, healthy adults, right? So you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. You just got to get them through childhood. But it made me, where I was going with that a minute ago when I was talking about, whatever they want to do, I want to be there to support them. So the other thing that I've become so passionate about is fitness and nutrition. Mm-hmm. Because I sit back and I watch everywhere, but especially in America, I watch people killing themselves with food and lifestyle. And I watch how people have just accepted that. And they just accept, well, yeah, when you're in your 50s or 60s, your own medicine and all this stuff is going wrong and you're just a mess. That's what happened. But it's not supposed to be that way, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to be that 65, 75-year-old granddad who's in the backyard kicking the ball with the kids and outrunning them in a foot race, and throwing the ball with them, or what I want to be. I don't want to be the granddad who has to sit down at the bottom of the bleachers when I go to the ball game because I can't climb the steps, right? And I want to be the granddad who can go up there and get the best spot and see them, and then run down there and cheer them, and so to me that's important. Because I think so many people just accept, I'm in my 50s or 60s or whatever. I'm not as active as I used to be. Well, guess what? You're robbing your grandchildren of some fun you could have with them. Mm-hmm. I get in the floor now with mine, and I'll grab their hands and put my feet in their hips like I'm going to Tomonagi them. I get them up in the air, and spin them around. They love it. Yeah, they love it. And I'll roll around with them, chase them, throw them up in the air, whatever. And I see so many people, like just my age, like I don't think 56 is old, but I see people my age who they have so many health problems they can't even do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just become passionate about fitness and nutrition because I want to live. I don't want to just live a long time. I want to live a healthy life for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that I can do all I can do and something could happen and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could get cancer and die next year. But what I'm saying is the parts I can control, what I eat, the lifestyle I live, I'm going to control it. I'm going to make the best decision possible.
And if you don't control it, I mean, yeah, you can't necessarily predict cancer or heart attack,
right?
Something like that. But if you don't control it, then the life that you do have when nothing happens, like there is no cancer, there is no heart attack, but you've been really unhealthy, well, then you've had a really unhealthy life for that whole time.
Well, and you're getting at kind of a starting point that I talk with clients whenever we're just starting to introduce the 8 domains and the discussion about values, and they're like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, here's where I start. As a blanket value across all of my domains, I want freedom from preventable problems.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Yep.
I want freedom from preventable problems. So physically, I want freedom from preventable diseases. I don't want certain types of diseases that I know that the wisdom that is there and the evidence that we have that if I do certain things, I will most likely not get certain things.
Yep.
Right? Like I don't throat cancer or lung cancer, so you know what? I just won't smoke. How about that?
Yep.
Things like that. So, I mean, freedom from preventable problems in our relationships, in our marriages, in our finances.
That's so good.
And that just becomes like a guiding over, like an umbrella value. And then from there we can kind of dig in. But you mentioned...
I'm going to hang on to that one. I may post that one on Instagram.
Do it. But freedom from preventable problems. But then you also talk about, and this is really important because there's a really good book on discipline. Maybe the second best book I've ever read on discipline is The Science of Discipline. And I can't remember who wrote it, but he talks about in researching highly disciplined people, like high achieving CEO executive types, highly successful athletes, things like that. They all, like almost universally, were able to report that they have an emotional attachment to a future version of themselves. And so I use that in developing the 8 domains to talk about, okay, when you're defining your values, we start with the question, how do I want to experience myself now? But our values also need to be geared at how do I want to experience myself into the future?
Yeah.
So what type of consequences do I want my 75-year-old self trapped in? Because the decisions I'm making today and until then are going to shape the consequences that a 75-year-old version of me will have to experience and have to deal with. So I can't abandon somebody that I care about. I need to care about that guy. I need to have a vision of my 75-year-old self and what type of life do I want to try to set him up to live.
Yeah.
And again, I can't, I have a buddy, Brad, who was coming to Jiu Jitsu, purple belt, young, fit, strong, healthy, had 2 strokes on the mat one Saturday morning.
That,
You can't predict that.
Oh, goodness.
Nope.
It was just some weird anomaly that just happened, right? And so, yes, there are certain things that are outside of our control. And he was doing almost everything that I can imagine you need to do to try and prevent those types of problems. So sometimes life, fate, God, whatever, doesn't work out the way that you want it to. But there's so much that we can control, and the evidence supports that when you do control those things, when you do well, you end up being well.
Yeah. Yeah, you just said something, though, that I do, and I didn't really think about it this way, but I do have a future version of myself.
You mentioned him.
That I look at. Like, I want to be... So this is going to sound whatever, but, like, I want to be that jacked grandpa.
Yeah, why not?
Like, I want to be 75, and I want my grandkids to say, look at Pawpaw's muscle. I want to be that guy. Yeah. I don't want to be the guy with the big fat gut hanging over my belt, and I can't hardly get up and down the steps.
The guy that can't look up.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
want to do that.
Yeah,
I don't.
I want to be literally the 75-year-old grandpa that my grandsons in high school say, "That's my pawpaw over there. Look at him,"
Yeah.
And so I look at that 75-year-old version of me and I say, like you said, well, how am I going to discipline myself to get there? It's not going to be by eating, bonbons and Twinkies and drinking Cokes.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be by eating good whole foods and exercising and taking care of myself.
And also, like, I don't think that I will ever be able to stop working. I just don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's also kind of an investment in that future version of myself. And I don't necessarily mean like seeing clients on a regular basis, but I'm going to have to stay engaged in something.
Yeah.
Some vocation, some productive work that's meaningful. But anyways, kind of the contrast is my dad, who worked his ass off whenever I was a kid. He was a coal miner. He, crawled around underground for 20 plus years until, coal mine shut down. Then he went on disability because of black lung, and he had like lost a toe down there and had heart attacks down there and all that stuff. So, but he's 78.
Yeah.
And he lives in assisted living, and we were kind of mentioning walking in here, kind of the condition that he's in. He really can't walk that well. He can't straighten his back to look up and look in the face, things like that. He needs kind of a higher level of care than he did even a year ago. But contrast that against like my mother-in-law, who's just about 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Yeah,
she plays pickleball every day. And now they're not going to do the hike that Amy and I are going to do, but we're all meeting at Machu Picchu on June 12th because they're going and traveling and flying and going to do the whole thing there at Machu Picchu with the, I think, National Geographic tour, and Amy and I are going to hike the 4-day Inca Trail. But the point is like, they're only 3 or 4 years apart. Yeah. And their capacity to experience and enjoy life is so vastly different. And that's not a knock on my dad, really. I mean, your dad at the time, working as hard as he did, like the things that he valued in that moment were valuable. They were important. But whenever Jamin and Rudy and I were on Bainbridge Island right there in that photo, right after I took that photo, Jamin turns around and asks me, he's like, "Dad, will you make me a promise?"
You told me this, yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm an old man repeating my stories.
No, I love it.
I don't think I knew this, yeah.
But yeah, he out of nowhere, he just turns around. We're on Bainbridge Island, just a guy's trip up to the Pacific Northwest, and he turns around right after I took that photo. He said, "Dad, will you make me a promise?" And I'm like, "Sure, bud, what's up?" And he was like 12 or 13 in this photo, maybe 14, and he's like, "Will you promise me that you'll never end up like Pawpaw?" Because my dad, I just moved him down here from Kentucky, and he was just needing a lot of help, and he was just struggling with mobility and things like that. And I think he could tell like how hard that was on my dad and how hard it was on me. And like we went through this weird thing to where he thought he was a burden on me, and I was like, "Listen, dude, like quit painting me out to be some deadbeat son who doesn't want to show up and take care of his dad. Like stop apologizing for needing help after all that you did for me whenever I was a kid."
Right.
But anyways, it was that. He was like, I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "Papa could never do this with us." He was like, "I want to make sure that for as long as possible, you can always get out and do this stuff with us."
Yep.
I'm like, absolutely, bud.
Yeah. And that's me, man. I want to be, I do. I want to be that grandfather who can hike up the mountain with them, run in the backyard, whatever, And so I've got to discipline myself toward that goal. So
yeah. All right. Well, we've covered a lot in the hour and a half or so. We talked about. Wow. Oh, and by the way,
hour and a half.
one little thing that I want you to take back to your youngest daughter.
Okay.
She is the reason I shot that double leg on you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was scrolling through your Instagram and you had posted her running a double leg on you.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jiu-Jitsu people don't expect it.
That's awesome.
And I don't have a half bad double leg, so I'm going to try it.
No, you have a great double leg, and so does she.
I have a great double leg on fresh legs. Because the third match, when I tried to shoot it from a different zip code, you saw it coming.
She's going to love that.
Yeah.
Because she, when I posted that video, like, I'm so proud of her because she's not afraid to shoot a double leg or a single leg. Like, she'll go all in. Now, she's learning what we all do in jiu-jitsu, which is if
Keep
you
your
do
head
it
up.
and don't do it properly, you're going to get guillotined or sprawled on.
Right.
Right? But she's not afraid to do it, man. She'll go in there.
And I was unfamiliar with. I hadn't competed since white belt, which was, and I took a
long time
7-year
ago, yeah.
break between getting my blue belt and going back.
Yeah.
And so it had been 8 years or so since I competed. I had no idea about points. So I thought when I shot that double leg, I got the points.
Yeah.
And then I thought whenever I landed in side control, I would get points. And then
Yeah.
whenever I mounted, I would get points. I didn't get any points until I got you to let go of my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you were technically had
Right,
caught
yeah,
me in
yeah.
a submission, even
Because
though I
I
wasn't
still had-
really
yeah.
ever in danger
Yep.
of that submission. I was like, I looked up after I like popped my head out and I was like, 2 points.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
Yeah, and then
All
you got
that
the mount
effort-
points.
Yeah,
you know,
all
so-
that effort for 2 points.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, so the takedown was so good and so sudden. So people asked me when they saw my Instagram, like, was he that fast? Some people didn't realize the first part of it was sped up some. 'Cause
Yeah.
I had to edit it and shrink
Right.
it, right? And I said, no, that's sped up. But it was a fast double leg.
But in real
because
time at our age, like,
But I was
Yeah.
trying to kind of fake you out. Like, I raised my right hand up. I don't want to hit the mic. But I kind of raised my right hand up to try to get you to look at it because then I was going to try to get a lapel grip. And when I raised my hand up, you shot that double, and I was like, wow, that's deep. But I caught the neck
Right.
long enough to keep you from finishing
Yeah.
it. But that was
and
that was
Javi had
good.
warned me. We talked about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Javi had warned me. He had came by and you saw him. He was like, hey, he likes to grab the lapel and do a collar grab.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
I was like, oh no, I've watched the Instagram.
that's what I would have done too if he hadn't said that. Yeah, yeah. But that was a lot of fun. But she'll
It
get
was
a
fun.
kick out of knowing that inspired you to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And then, man, whatever that canto in the, anyways.
Yeah, the step over
Oh,
choke. It's
God,
a
it was
canto,
so
canto choke.
fast and so
Yeah.
so violent. I was,
I've been doing that like on everybody. I've fallen in love with it. At white belt, I fell in love with the Ezekiel choke. My coach literally made me quit. He's like, Paul, stop doing the Ezekiel choke. I was like, why?
because you won't get good at anything else.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He's like, you're finishing everybody with it, but you're not learning to climb the body, right?
Right.
So he's like, put it in your back pocket. It'll always be there, right?
Right.
But then it's been the scarf choke, the canto choke, a lot of those things I've fallen in love with. In fact, sometime I'll tell you about this, but the scarf choke, you ever do the scarf choke?
Is it like a paper cutter from North South?
No, you're using your own lapel,
Oh, no.
and you go above their shoulder but around their neck, right?
Yeah.
And then when you turn and get your head all the way to the other side, you get a choke. The problem is some people just are very resistant to a choke. And so I added a little wrinkle to it now. So when you get it across and they're not tapping, I'll pop up to knee on neck. Which, I mean, it's kind of a jerk move to do to your
Everything in
partners,
jiu-jitsu
right?
is a dick move
But
because
when-
you're trying to
Yeah.
mimic murdering somebody.
Yeah, but when you
So-
you've got that lapel over there and you come up to knee on neck, and I was forced to learn it because there's a kid that I train with who's almost impossible to choke out. You can sink the best choke in ever and he won't tap. So I had a scarf choke. He wasn't tapping, and I just popped up and put my knee on his neck, and I got the tap, and I'm like, So now I've been trying this, and it's very effective. So.
Yeah, we've got a white belt that or he's a blue belt now, but when he was a white belt, I put him to sleep, and he didn't realize that I put him to sleep as they never do.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to him. I was like, dude, like it's noon on a Wednesday. Just tap.
Yeah,
like,
just
it's
tap.
not that serious. He's like, well, when should I tap? Before you pass out,
Yeah.
preferably. And so then like a week or two ago, I was teaching and I was doing like leg drag to a back take to collar choke and whatnot. And I get him in this from the back collar choke because I don't like doing rear naked chokes because I have baby arms and and he wasn't tapping. And so then I just switched it around to a bow and arrow real quick, and he still didn't tap. And I was just like, what the hell is happening? And I could hear him like, gurgling and everything. And I eventually just like let go of it. It's like, I don't
Not
like,
trying to actually.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't like it. Like
Yeah.
I've 3 people total that I've choked unconscious, and it's
a weird feeling.
It's a weird
Yeah,
feeling.
it really
whenever
is.
You're just that they're
Yeah.
going to be okay, but also just tap, guys.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, the the guy that forced me to learn that neo neck thing there. So it was the same way with him last week. Like I literally before that I got there and I'm like, I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but I'm like, don't go to sleep, and finally he tapped, and I was like, man, it's a 6 a.m. class on a Tuesday morning. Like, don't go to sleep, just tap.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah, I love it too.
Yeah.
Can't get enough of it. Yeah. Speaking about tough to choke, my north-south paper cutter choke, I caught you with it.
Yeah.
And you just rode it out.
Yeah, it was tight though.
Yeah.
It was so tight.
But yeah, the second and the third matches were definitely a reality check for me of just like, oh God, this is, the conditioning was not there.
Yeah.
And the mental for me, like, I don't mind saying it. I'm, 43 middle-aged father. Like, I'm not trying to win world championships here, but like the mental aspect of like, I didn't want to fight you again. I was like, after the first one, I was like, is there no one else?
No, I'll be honest with you.
I just want to move on.
I'll be honest with you. I do want to win world championships.
Well, go for it.
But after the first match with you, I wasn't sure I wanted to. I literally had to psych myself up. I was like, I don't know if I was like, I don't know if I can beat him. Like I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I feel like my conditioning kicked in.
Mine did not.
Because I like those.
Which is a part of the game.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
You,
it is.
I'm not making excuses like, if I was in better shape. No, I wasn't in better shape.
Hey, there's a reason.
That's why.
There's a reason I lift twice a week.
Yeah.
There's a reason I do sprints every Sunday. It's all so that in that time my conditioning is there, right?
Yeah.
But that was a fun day. But like I said, after that first match, I had to psych myself up because I was like, oh great, like family's here watching me, and like that dude just beat me, and I don't know if I've got enough in the tank.
In our first match, the only thing that I heard other than Milton tell me, now Benji, when you moved your hand and I could get the choke in, the only other thing I heard was my 10-year-old say, "Win it for your children, Dad."
Hey, maybe that's what worked.
And I was like, damn it, put me on the spot. Yeah, he didn't say it in the second or the third, thank God, because I was done.
Well, before we went out for the third match, I literally looked at my daughter and I said, I'm not even going to pretend like I'm all like, hey, let's go. I said, I'm not. Like, I was spent.
Yeah. It was super fun. Then it's been super fun.
Yeah,
now.
This has been a blast.
Thank you for giving us your time. And we'll try to get this posted within a reasonable amount of time. The cool thing about doing a podcast with your friends is that you don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
The downside to doing a podcast with your friends is that you don't pay them, so you can't tell them when to do things.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Whenever you get it out there, it's fine. But this has been fun. Even if we didn't record it and post it, this has been fun.
Oh, good, because I forgot to hit.
All right, man. Well, Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.